Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Sharp Weekly. In this video I want to show you what exactly is Flutter and how you can get started with Flutter. So Flutter was released in 2018, so last year, by Google, and it allows you to create cross-platform application. If you have ever worked with React Native or Xamarin, so it's kind of like that. So if you have actually worked with React Native, it's very similar to React Native. I mean, when you're writing code, you kind of feels like React Native, although it's using Dart language and not JavaScript. And it has other features like live reloading and everything. So in this video, I'm just going to show you like the basics of Flutter. Now, I am obviously not an experienced Flutter developer. It just got released and I've been playing around with it for only a couple of hours only. So let's get started. So I'm saying that you have already downloaded and installed Flutter. We're not going to cover that right now. Hopefully you have already installed Flutter and all that stuff. So let me go to the console over here. And now I can actually go ahead and start using Flutter. I'm going to launch my terminal. And I'm going to just jump onto desktop. And I'm going to say Flutter, create my first Flutter app. So it's going to create a folder, as you can see, and I'm going to go inside that folder and I can also run the pre-generated code that it has created. So now let's go ahead and jump into this folder, my first Flutter app. And if I want to run, I can simply say Flutter run like this. But I want to also open it up in basically different editor. And for this, you should use VS Code. VS Code has all built-in, a lot of built-in stuff which is actually used by Flutter. So I'm simply going to say code and open up this particular folder in VS Code. And here we go. So my project is now opened in VS Code, as you can see. The file that we are after is the main.dart file. All right, so main.dart file. Now there's a lot of code. This is all boiler level code and most of it is actually comments. If I have to go ahead and run this application, I'm going to go to debug and start debugging. It's going to ask me that do you want me to run it on Pixel 2, which is basically installed, which is an Android device, or iOS simulator. I'm just going to select iOS simulator. And the first time it launches, it will take a little bit of time. All right, but on the subsequent launches, it will be much faster. And actually, I can even show you the live reloading thing. It's actually pretty cool. Sometimes it gets stuck. It doesn't work as expected, but most of the time, I would say it works fine. So the first time you can see it's running, it's going to take a little bit of time to run the application. And this is all the code that has been added once we created the Flutter app by running Flutter create the app name. So I haven't written any line of code, as you can see. So let's go ahead and wait for it to run. All right, still building. So this is only for the first time. It does take a while. Even if you run it on your device, it is going to take a while to build and run it for the first time. But hopefully, for the next time we're going to run, it will be much faster. Okay, so here it is. Now I can click over here and you can see the increments. That's what the app is actually doing. Let's go ahead and build the same app, but we're not going to use any of this code. But we're going to build the same app, but not use any of this code. We're just going to write it again. The other thing I want to do is show you the live reload. So let's go ahead and put it here. You can see the Flutter, I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe it's VS Code, maybe it's a simulator, but the fan is on now and it's basically taking a lot of resources. Okay, Flutter, if I want to say something over here, Flutter, hello, and save it, you can see it actually changed it over here. Let me go ahead and change where is our text. Just want to show you the live feature. So if I want to change all of this and I want to say hello world, and if I save it, you can see it's actually refreshing. So this is the live reload feature of Flutter. Now I'm not going to use any of that stuff. So let's get started from the beginning. The first thing I want to do is I want to import. I want to import the package that will allow me to use the material package. All right, so it has to be Flutter slash material Dart. What exactly is the material? It's the UI theme kind of engine which will allow you to use some of the controls or some of the themes to make look things nicer. And okay, there we go. Void main, and this, now we are running our main application. So run app, and I'm going to call it my app. That's fine. Now there is no such thing as my app, so we need to create my app, which will be a class. So class my app extends stateless widget. Now everything in Flutter, like literally everything in Flutter, is a widget. Small widget, like a text widget, like a button widget, list widget. All right, everything is a widget. Okay, so if you hover over here, it's going to say that, well, you need to have at least the build function. So let's go ahead and create the build function. I'm going to say overwrite, and it's going to return a widget, build. It's going to give us the build context that's automatically passed to us. And now we can return something. So I'm going to use the material app, and that is the material package that we are using. And in the material app, I'm going to set the title to something. Let's say welcome to Flutter. There we go. And I'm also going to set something called home. Now home is basically the main screen, the root screen, or the first screen that the person is going to see. All right, so let's go ahead and set this up. Scaffold. Scaffold, what exactly is scaffold? Now scaffold is basically a helper function that allows you to set the navigation bar. I think it's called the app bar. Let's actually go ahead and see it. App bar, and also allows you to set the body. All right, so app bar is the navigation bar on the top. So let's go ahead and check it out. Everything is a widget, so you have to create the app bar over here. And in the app bar, you can pass in something. I believe you can pass in the title. So hello or welcome to Flutter. All right. And you have to put semicolons. So there we go, semicolon over here. And semicolon. I don't think actually you need a semicolon over here. What is it saying? Let's see. The argument type cannot be assigned to parameter type widget. That's my mistake. Everything is a widget. All right. So there's no, like, you can't assign it like that. You have to use the text widget to assign this. So let's go ahead and use the text widget and pass in welcome to Flutter. Great. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what it actually looks like. So I'm going to go over here to debug and start debugging. Hopefully we'll be able to see something, maybe the app bar at the top, and it wouldn't really have any body or anything associated with that. So just the top navigation bar with no body. And then later on, we can go ahead and add the body also. But right now, it really won't have anything. So let's go ahead and see. Welcome to Flutter. Hopefully, here we go. So we got our first, the app bar on the top, you can see. It doesn't really have any body. As you can see, there's nothing as a body. So now what can we do? Well, you can actually set the body in the second argument, or over here, outside of the app bar. So body, and you can set something up. So what should we do in the body? Well, you can do anything you want. I can go ahead and create a text, and I can say hello world, and you can see the text appearing right over here on the top left corner. But I don't really want it on the top left corner. I want it in the middle. So how can I do that? Well, there's a widget for that. Go ahead and use the center widget. Everything that you put inside the center widget will be in the center. But you can't really just shove things in the center widget. You have to use the child property of it. So I'll have one child, which in this case will be text, and it will be called, let's say, hello world. Let's go ahead and save that. And now you can see hello world is over here. Now, if I do want to add a button, then it becomes a little bit more complicated, because I can't really add another child to the center widget I have to use some other technique to do that. So what is that technique? Well, I'm not going to use this center, so let's remove the center. Okay, so in order to center it, what I'm going to use is, first of all, I am going to use a center widget. And the child of the center widget will not be the text box or the label or anything. It will be a column widget. Now the column widget, first of all, we have to tell that the column widget should be in a center alignment. Basically, everything that we put inside this column widget, it should be horizontally centered. That's great. And now we can actually go ahead and pass the children's. So these will be the things that you're going to add into the column widget. If you have ever worked with web development and you have worked with Flexbox, so it's kind of like a Flexbox where you can just put stuff in a Flexbox which is in a column-wise fashion. All right. So the first thing I'm going to put will be some sort of a text, which is hello world. And the second thing that I can put, now you can see it's actually in the center. Second thing I can put is the flat button. There we go, flat button. Now the flat button is just a button, and I can have different things on it. So the first thing I need is on pressed. And on press right now, it's not really going to do anything. So just going to leave it like that. That's fine. Let's go ahead and set the color. So I'm going to say colors.orange. Go ahead and set the padding. You can see it's updating on the right hand side. The padding I'm going to set to edge insets and all. Let's give it like 10.0. And now I will add a child to my flat button. So child, which in this case will be a text, because I want to display some text inside the button. Press me. And now you can see that we have a child inside the button. If you want to change the color of the text, then you can pass in the second argument, which is actually style, and you can use a text style, and in this case will be a color, which will be colors dot whatever color you want. I'm just going to say white, and when you save it, it actually refreshes. Great, right? Okay, so this is all good. I might even be able to press the button. So if I go over here in the body, I can say over here debug print, and I can say maybe button pressed. Let's go ahead and press a button, and you can see on the console right over here that I am pressing the button, and it's worked fine. The problem is that, first of all, we need to display over here the counter, and we need to increment the counter. And we also need to press a button to increment the counter. But nothing is going on right now. It's not working at all. So how can we fix that problem? What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a completely separate widget which is responsible for displaying the counter, displaying the button, and even maintaining the state. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new widget, my custom widget, and I'm going to call this increment counter. It is going to extend from a, not stateless this time, it will be a stateful widget. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and override. So one of the things that the Flutter framework does is that although this is a widget, and I'm saying that this is a stateful widget, I have to create a separate widget which will be responsible for updating the build, meaning updating the actual state, and also providing the build function which will be responsible for creating the UI. It's kind of like a lot of work to do, and I hope that that actually improves in the future. But right now you have to create that state widget also. So let's go ahead and do that. That will be the widget with actually a lot of code. So increment counter state creates, not create state, that's a function. And this is going to point to the increment counter state, which by the way does not exist, so don't worry about that. We're going to implement that. And now we're going to implement this particular widget. Now this particular widget, the increment counter state, we can call this anything you want by the way, will be responsible for maintaining the state of the counter. because every time I press, the counter is going to increment, right? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Increment counter state extends from the state, and this will be increment counter. All right. The first thing we need to do is we need to define some sort of a variable that is going to keep track of the state. So I'm going to define a private variable, which will be counter 0. I'm using an underscore over here, which actually means that this is a private variable. It will not be available to anyone outside. The other thing that I need to do is I need to implement the state.build function. The build function is actually responsible for creating the user interface. So let's go ahead and do that. Build override widget build, and we're going to pass in the build context, which is the context. There we go. And now I can go ahead and build. All right. So let's go ahead and return over here, return scaffold. So basically we're taking over what we did over there, over here. We're basically taking up all the stuff. Actually, I can simply copy paste most of the stuff over here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're taking up all of this stuff, basically all the scaffolding stuff, and we are putting it into a different component. So let me go ahead and copy it from over here. And simply when I'm returning, I can simply return this one. All right. Okay, so now we need to make sure, first of all, that everything is intact. Might need over here on line number 36, a semicolon. All right, so that should be okay for now. Let's see if we can use this particular component to be displayed. So if I am going to go over here, the body or the home is now set to nothing. So now I can say that, hey, you know what, for the home component or the widget, you're going to use the increment counter. So let's go ahead and just type in increment counter. And let's see if it actually uses the increment counter widget. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and force refresh it. Okay, so once I do refresh it, I see the same thing. Let's go ahead and see that if this is the same exact thing. I'm going to say text is fine, and over here I'm just going to change the text of the button to say increment counter, and if I save it, you can actually see it saving. So we have successfully added all of this code into our increment counter state, which is actually used by increment counter, and then we are saying that the increment counter widget will be your home widget. So when the application launches, the increment counter widget is the first widget that you're going to see. All right, great. The question is, we still haven't figured out how should we update the state. If I press increment counter, well, nothing really happens. It simply prints out maybe on the debug on the console. So how can we increment the counter? So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing, and you don't really have to do it, but the first thing you can do is move all of this code out into a separate function. So let me go ahead and call a separate function, and I will call that function increment counter. I'm calling it with underscore, so this means this is a private function. So let's go ahead and create that function. Okay, so this increment counter will be a private function. I'm just going to go ahead and create it. So right over here, I'm just going to say void increment counter. There we go. All right. And now inside the increment counter, I need to update the state. Basically, I need to update this variable. So I can't really simply do counter plus plus. That's definitely going to update the variable, but it's not going to build the whole UI again. What I want to do is update this and then update all the UI stuff so that it can reflect on the screen. So this is not going to work. So there is another function that you should use, which is called a set state. It's actually, the concept is pretty much like React. If you have worked with React, the concept is pretty much the same. In React also, when you set the state, it actually renders, right? So that's the same thing that's going to happen. In this case, it's not rendered, it's called build. So let's go ahead and update this. So private variable counter plus plus, great. So this should be updating. Now the problem is that how should we display this value over here? So if you need to display the value from the state, you just say dollar and then underscore counter. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. Our counter is actually increasing, and we build the whole app from scratch. This is amazing. This also has state, and it has a my app component, and the home is displaying the increment counter. So there you have it. That will be your first Flutter application. If you have liked this video and you want to support my channel or want to support my other Udemy videos, then you can actually go to Udemy and search for my name, which is Mohammad Azam, or you can simply click on the link in the description and you will find many different courses that I have created which are hosted on and available on Udemy. All right. So whether you're learning about blockchain or Swift or iOS development, there are a lot of courses that are available that can help you out. Thank you so much, and I really hope that you have enjoyed this introductory video about Flutter development.